Alright, so I'm primarily a single player gamer, if that wasn't obvious. The only get like I'll usually at least try a game's multiplayer unless like the multiplayer is dead around the time I get to it, or it's just like completely taken over by cheaters or sweats. Which in a lot of games I do play these games like either don't have multiplayer or it just dies off so fast, and I just don't have any interest in it. So let's talk about something different this time, something that actually is primarily multiplayer focused, though some of these do have single player experiences. There were only a few like multiplayer games that I actually like played for the multiplayer primarily, like not completely usually, but like that was the main thing. It was Counter Strike up until freaking Valve ruined CS:GO with like fail patches and like stupid balancing decisions that made it completely catered towards wannabe esports sweats, and Counter-Strike 2 did little to fix that, if not make it worse. And this is coming from someone who used to be addicted to 1.6 and CZ and played that shit competitively. There's also Call of Duty up until it started going downhill. I'd say around the time Modern Warfare 2 and Black Ops is when I kind of started noping out of that. Or Modern Warfare 3 and Black Ops. Yeah, Modern Warfare 2 was like okay. And Black Ops 1 was fine. Let's see, the Battlefield series, as you can see, but that was more on and off with that. Splatoon and maybe Mario Kart. That's about it. Like, I guess there's also a few other games I like play with friends, like Mario Party, but again, that's just stuff I do with friends. But anyways, getting back to Battlefield, I actually only owned about maybe half of these, and still own like 3 of them. The rest I either rented or played at a friend's house / borrowed from a friend, so make of that as you will. So speaking of that, starting off with 1942, I did not own this one. I borrowed it from a friend. And I did play the expansion packs as well, which is, I'm not going to be talking about the map packs or / expansion packs, because that's really what they are, it's just map packs. Although Battlefield 1942's second one, Secret Weapons, was pretty stupid. Added some pretty stupid things like jetpacks, so probably best that we don't talk about those. But anyways, it was a cool idea when it first came out, and I do remember playing it a fair amount with said friend. I kind of didn't play it all that much because I kind of preferred. I was like, for my World War II stuff, I preferred playing either Allied Assault or Call of Duty 1. But like, it was a cool idea when a pretty different idea of having these large multiplayer battle zones that had vehicles spawned into them, and just like really kind of made that conquest game loop. But my problem with it, when I fell out for it, is just the battlefields are just too sparse. Like, they were kind of too big sometimes. Well, compared to some of the later ones, like, not as much, but they just felt too big. But that's all because they were just sparse. It was just like often bland deserts and fields, where one map just honestly looked the same as the other most of the time. And this was kind of like. This one was kind of like, if you weren't in a vehicle, you were just fucked. Just don't even bother. Like, you might get an exception as a sniper, but that's about it. I did appreciate the fact that it had a bot campaign, and that's the reason I even tried it in the first place. And like, it did have bot support of just playing with bots, but it had like an actual structured. Well, I say structured, but it was still just playing the multiplayer with bots. But like, it was going through in order with like a sort of historical narrative going on. So I appreciate that it did that. It's kind of like Condition Zero's bot campaign, if you will. So like, it's been outdone. Let's be real. It's been outdone in every single way by a lot of these other entries. And like, apart from like a nostalgia burst, if you can even find people to play with, it's not really worth going back to. And that was even back then, honestly, when like 2 came out. So like, it's a B tier. Like, I'll give it credit for coming up with a different concept, but again, it's just been outdone. And speaking of being outdone, Battlefield Vietnam, same engine, played pretty similarly, but the battlefields were a lot more detailed, and to me, they felt more diverse. Plus, the fact that it was a Vietnam game, when around that time, honestly, even nowadays, we still see hardly any of just Vietnam games in general. Even fewer of them are shooters. So, I played the hell out of that game for like a few months. I had a lot of fun with it. I kind of sucked that they got rid of the bot campaign, but it did have full bot support, so you can get used to the maps and playing it. But I probably played that for like a few days, on and off, and then I got into the multiplayer, and was addicted to it for quite a while, because I was kind of having a burnout from Counter-Strike. Like, honestly, it is just 1942, but better. Because, again, honestly, the balancing was better, too, because, like, you could actually do stuff on foot more than you could in 1942. Though, like, you still had to get in the vehicle if you needed to go across the map for whatever reason, but, you know, you could still get into some good infantry fights, as well as, depending on your class, actually have a chance of taking certain things down. The helicopters were like a holy shit moment, because, man, it was like that difficult to get used to controlling. But I'm gonna say it's an A tier, because like it's just 1942 but better. And again, it was fun enough to keep me hooked for a lot longer than 1942 did. But Battlefield 2 was probably the one classic game that most people are most fond of, because it did take what 1942 and Vietnam did, but improved them in some ways. I think this was also working on a different engine, because I do remember it looking better. The battlefields are definitely more detailed than both of the previous games. I personally had less fun with it and didn't play it as long as I did with Vietnam. I know a lot of people like this new the new class system compared to the previous games. I mean, like, the previous games had classes, but they were more definitive in this one. At least that's how it felt to me. I don't really have a whole lot to say about it, honestly, because, again, I didn't play it as long. Other than it's just more Vietnam in 1942, but probably better. I would personally put Vietnam above it, but I'm just gonna say it's also an A tier. I do think this one was overrated, because I remember like people like acting like it was the best thing ever. I'm just like, is it really? Because it just felt like more of the same, and honestly, that's probably why I didn't play it that long. This one did also have 2 map packs. Don't ask me what they had, because I had them, but I don't know. But that's only because they came with the game. Again, it's fun, but I'm not even sure if you can go back and play that one, because if I remember correctly, that one you had to tie your CD key to your account. And Vietnam in 1942, if I remember correctly, relied on GameSpy. So I'm not sure if honestly any of these are really playable outside of like LAN or some other alternative. The next one, Battlefield Modern Combat, was the console version. I say with air quotes, because this is a completely different game. Like, it was Battlefield in a modern setting like 2, but it was not the same game at all. Like, first of all, this one had a proper single-player campaign, although kind of a weird one. It felt kind of like a bot match, because you could die and respawn. I think you could also, like, swap characters on the fly. But it still kind of sort of played like a traditional campaign at the same time. It's really hard to explain. The story was kind of stupid. Like, it was pretty simple, just like war between us and China, which, good luck getting away with that these days. Which you'd think would be easy, because they're not exactly our friends. But, you know, we can't offend China. Anyways, I never actually tried the multiplayer on this one, because I did not have Xbox Live on my original system for very long. Like, I only tried it once because I really wanted to try Halo 2's multiplayer. And Mech Assault's multiplayer, but yeah, around the time when I picked this up, I just didn't have it anymore. I just got it off the bargain bin. I kind of wanted to see what the difference was. And the fact that I heard it had a proper single-player game and tried it out, it was okay for what it offered. But between the two, the PC Battlefield 2 was, I think most people will agree, was the better one. Yeah, and I can't really say too much about it because I didn't try the multiplayer. I'm just basing it entirely off of its single-player campaign. The next one was a bit more controversial because I only played this one once. I remember, like, it was a cool idea having a FPS, like a Battlefield FPS set in like a future time, and not like this near future bullshit we saw with Call of Duty. But something like having fucking mechs and shit in it, that was the cool idea. Unfortunately, I think people were tired of that standard loop, because I think this was just using Battlefield 2's engine, just reskinning things and adding new vehicles. And obviously new maps too. I really don't remember too much about it other than just like thinking it was just, this is just Battlefield 2 with like prettier guns and mechs. I do remember a big controversy on this one because the bulletin boards had dynamically updated advertisements in them. Oh boy, I remember the time when companies were trying to pull that shit by being able to like change ads in game. Some of the times you didn't notice, some of the times you did. I remember in Rainbow Six Lockdown, you would just see these updated posters just all over the damn place in the PC version. It looked so out of place. This one was like, I believe it was restrained to billboards, so it wasn't as jarring, but it was still just like, it felt like a cash grab. From what little I played of it, it's just, it was alright. I really can't say too much about that one. If anybody else played that one, you can comment about it, what you thought about it, but only playing it once, like, I had fun with it, but I never felt I needed to get it or borrow it even. So, yeah. That's also the game that finally got me to stop caring about Battlefield. It's just because, like, it was fun, but I'm tired of this. And I'm tired of the lack of a single player to keep me coming back. Well, not keep me coming back, but to, like, make me want to break it out later on and replay it. But they changed that with Bad Company. And I will start off by saying the multiplayer was kind of Battlefield 2, but on console, I guess. It was a bit more simplified because it was a console exclusive experience, and honestly, that's fine. That's less. I do remember spending less time just running around trying to find a fight. So, I guess it was a bit more streamlined, but it felt better and a bit fresher. I think this was the first game that they introduced the Frostbite engine on, or at least the early version of it. I believe that's the case. But I do remember thinking it looked pretty decent, and there was quite a bit of destruction in it, which was also, I believe, a first for the series. Because most buildings, you could just tear the shit out of them. I don't think you could completely knock them down, but like you could like blow holes in them and shit, make your own way through stuff. That was pretty cool, and you can do it both the multiplayer and the single player. And speaking of which, this one is the first one to have a proper campaign and not just like a bot campaign or just playing the regular maps with bots. Though that did come at the cost of having bots in the game, which this is another thing about Battlefield 2142 is I cannot for the life of me remember if that had bot support or not. Because if it didn't, that's another knock on it. But this one, I know for a fact did not, but having that campaign in place of it was more than, like, acceptable. Because that campaign was good. Oh, I think most people even did talk about Bad Company 1, they talk about the campaign, but... And not only was the structure good, but the, it had open maps with linear progression, if that makes sense. Because there were times where you would get funneled in taking certain routes. Most of the time, it's like, here's where you are, here's your objective, like, figure out how do you want to do it. and it worked really well. Like it felt like this. It felt like this is like a Battlefield single player experience. Is how it should be handled. And not only that, it came with probably not a great story, but very good writing for what story there was, and the characters were just like fleshed out and likable, even if they were kind of like stereotypes. Because you know you have the freaking squad leader who in the second one is always talking about how he's going to retire and tempting fate. You know, you got your squeaky clean new guy who's questioning why he's there, which is your player character. Then you have the nerdy one and the southern one, which are polar opposites. So you know that makes for interesting chemistry when it's done properly and meshed together properly, like it was in this game. It was a bit on the short side, unfortunately. There's only 8 missions, though. Again, those missions are quite large and have a decent amount of replayability. I will say the one serious problem I did have with this is that how deaths worked is the fact that there is very little punishment for it. Outside of like one particular map or one particular mission, like you just get set back a little in distance to where you died. That's the only punishment, because everything you killed is still killed. It doesn't like load a previous save. It literally just teleports you back to where you started. And I think you even you keep all your equipment, if I remember correctly, though it gives you fresh ammo. If I remember correctly, your friendlies are not killable, or if they are, they just go down temporarily, which is good because nobody wants to do an escort mission. But again, progression through these maps is just a lot of fun. And that is another good thing about this game, is this is the first one to have really good sound design with its guns. They feel, they look, and they sound powerful to shoot. They're loud, they have recoil, and I love it. So, between good multiplayer, though I didn't spend that much time with it because like when I picked it up it was like $15 because I figured I'd just be playing for the single player. But for the Stellar campaign, that's an S tier. Destructibility is just an extra bonus. The sequel was a little bit different. The maps were more linear in a traditional campaign. This means they were shorter and more predictable, but there were more levels, so it probably ran about the same playtime. The story goes a plus and a minus in the second one because it had more of like what you'd expect from a proper story than than the first one, where you're just chasing mercenaries around trying to steal their gold. Whereas this one actually has some stakes. But it came at the cost of the writing. Like, don't get me wrong, the writing is still good, and the characters are still the characters that you came to like from the first game, but it had a lot more of a serious tone, so a lot of the humor from the first game was kind of either lost or just different. And a lot of it was replaced by having the characters say fuck all the time, because I think because of Call of Duty going M-rated, they were like, we gotta do that too, but we gotta push it even harder. So the writing can be a bit cringe, just like, do we really need to say fuck all the time? We didn't do it in the previous game. But aside from that, those are my only complaints for it, and honestly those are just more nitpicks. Because despite the fact that it is more linear and a traditional campaign, it's still a pretty well-made one. There's, again, everything else from the previous game is still there. It's still pretty destructible. The sound design is still great. The weapons still feel like you have power in them, and there's probably honestly I want to say there's a slightly bigger variety in this one than there was in the previous game, although it's not all the guns in the previous game carried over. Like, I know the M416 is missing, but I know the AK is still there. But it did add a few other weapons to go with it. The sniper rifle felt like it had quite a bit of power, and I do appreciate the fact that it took a bit of skill to use in comparison, other than like previous games where it's just point and click, basically. But yeah, the campaign was fun. It was replayable. Then even though it was linear, it was still good. Just all around. The multiplayer, on the other hand, the multiplayer actually did spend quite a bit of time in this one. Honestly, I think I'd probably spend more time in this game's Well, no, I think I still spent a bit more time in Vietnam. But in comparison to the other ones, I spent more time than like 1942. Definitely more than the original. Because this took the formula and honestly, in my opinion, perfected it. Because while the maps were still smaller than what you'd see in the older PC games, they were the right size to where you could find a fight without having to wander the field too much. And it didn't really allow like people to just sneak around to find a poorly defended base and just capture it. It also wasn't as sniper heavy as the previous games could be. Like, don't get me wrong, they were still viable and you still saw a fair amount of them, but it wasn't like in a lot of the previous games where you were in a vehicle or you had a sniper or you died. Because you can go in as an assaulter and pretty much still get some kills and do some good. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. And honestly, this is probably my favorite entry. Heroes was a free-to-play game, which I only tried once, out of curiosity. It was free-to-play, sparse on content, and had a very cartoony look, which I get why they did it. They needed to do something to set it apart and just kind of give you a reason to try it, I guess. It's just, unless you didn't have any of these other games, or were too, I don't want to say brokey, but like, unless you just literally could not afford games, then this was your only choice to play Battlefield. There's no reason to play it, and it got shut down pretty quickly. Like, for a free-to-play game, it was fair, and that's the only reason it's not getting put into F, but yeah, there's nothing to talk about, and no reason to play it, because honestly, you can't play it anymore. The next game, 1943, was like a follow-up to 1942, this one taking place in the Pacific. The problem is and the main reason why I never played this one is because it was digital only and not free. And I think it was like $20, but from what I heard, it was very sparse on content, and it did not have bot support. So that was strike number 2 and 3 for me. So I never played it. I've never really heard much people talk about it. Maybe it was fun, but I don't know. Like, if they wanted to make a successor to 1942, they should have just made a proper game instead of, you know, a sparse, cheap, downloadable only with no bot support. At least I didn't think it had bot support. Someone could correct me on that if it did. Battlefield 3 was when the series finally just well, I guess they already kind of set this in motion with the Bad Company games in 1943, but I think this is like when we could say like they fully went in a console-focused direction, which was both a good and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it still retained that Battlefield feel, but it kind of like did something similar to what the Bad Company games did. But it's also important that they did that because this is when EA started forcing Origin in their PC games, and I'm of the opinion of fuck and that. I never have and never will use Origin. So playing indie games from this point on the console is the only way I even get to play these games. But thankfully this was back in the PS3 days when if you had a PS3 you could play this shit for free online, unlike the Xbox. And then, PS4 changed that, but, we're not talking about that yet. Battlefield 3. This one's kind of hard to talk about, because it is kind of like Battlefield 2, but for multiplayer wise, it is like Battlefield Bad Company 2, but the battlefields are they're larger, and they're somewhere between what I would say the old Battlefield games and Bad Company 1 and 2. This one, it wasn't as streamlined as Bad Company was, but honestly, this is the whole way I can just describe Battlefield 3's experience. It's somewhere between old Battlefield and Bad Company, which honestly, like, it's fun, but it didn't really hold my interest enough, because it's like, pick a lane, either go the full on massive Battlefield thing like Mag did, or stick to stick to Bad Company, because at least that game had personality to it. This one just kind of didn't. Like, it was fun, but I don't know. It was kind of missing something for me. And the single-player campaign was decent, but it was short, and it wasn't as interesting as the Bad Company games were, because they tried to go serious this time like Bad Company 2 did, but without the good writing and the characters to go with it. So, like, it's kind of one of those play it once and forget about it campaigns. Like, but I will say, of like, between this and some of its successors, I'd be more likely to go back to it at some point. But for now, it's a B tier. I'll say it's like the top of B, but it's still a B. And Battlefield 4 was just... I know I'm sounding like a broken record right now, but this kind of rings true to it. Battlefield 4 was just 3, but this is a little bit better. From a multiplayer standpoint, that is, but it was only slightly better. The single-player campaign was worse, I will say, because the story was even worse than 3. They tried to do something a bit more than 3's like generic story, but it just came off as worse. And the characters are kind of insufferable. And the worst part is, like, at the end, like, after you've done everything else, it literally gives you a pick a character to kill button. And I could not pick a certain character fast enough. I'll leave that up to your imagination which one I picked. But man, was I did have no remorse about killing that guy. It was also kind of stupid because, like, only like the first mission does it really feel like, like a Battlefield war game. After that, it feels like it's like wanted to try and turn into Black Ops, if that makes sense. But yeah, I really did not care for the campaign. Then multiplayer is only slightly better, so I'm gonna say it's inferior to 3. Hardline was a thing. I was interested in it. Like, I know a lot of people got turned off because of the whole, like, we want to do cops and robbers. And I'm just thinking, okay, I'm up for a police game. Like, I know we're not going to get SWAT, but, something like, I guess more of like a, like, less tactical SWAT-ish game, if that makes sense. But that's not what we got. I'm going to say I never tried the multiplayer because the single player made me sick. And that's because this was kind of when we started to enter the area of woke gaming, for lack of better terming. And I don't remember if this was off the heels of a high-profile incident. I honestly don't remember when this game came out, to be honest, but I think this was like around the heels of the Trayvon Martin thing. I could be wrong, though. But they decided to go with a very much anti-cop rhetoric. And I think what they were going for actually was like saying, I think what they were trying to do is be like, hey, don't privatize the police, regulate the police, which would have made sense if it wasn't written so horribly. And on top of that, it adds an illegal immigrant sob story into it. As Terminator Dark Fate, how that does for you. And by that I mean the movie, not the game. Yeah, this was a piece of shit. Which is unfortunate because the beginning of the game is actually pretty decent gameplay-wise, and the campaign is decent gameplay-wise. Because it actually gives you the opportunity to, play as a cop and not just kill everyone. But then it drops that and goes in the whole, oh, you've been framed for murder, so now you're going blacklist, above the law type of thing. So it's just like, what was the point of the whole cops and robbers things if they're going to drop that? And again, I get the whole thing was like, because, the police got corrupt because they went private. And I'm just like, you could have done that so much better. Like maybe a change from within type of thing. But no, we had to do like a typical... the people I work for are bad, so I got framed for doing something I didn't, so we gotta change sides. And changing sides, this one is apparently being a criminal. I mean, not really, but you get what I'm getting at. And just, again, between the god-awful woke writing and just the fact that the second half of the campaign just sucks ass, it's a D tier. The only reason I'm not putting it in F is just because, again, it's playable, and it's better than a certain other game I'm planning to put in F tier. And I think you can probably guess what that is looking at the rest of this list. Now, Battlefield 1, this kind of got my interest in, like, really got me back into playing Battlefield instead of just renting it like I did with 3, 4, and Hardline. I bought this game because, you know, it's a World War I game, and we don't have very many of those. Even fewer of them have proper single-player campaigns. The only other World War I games I can think of that did were the Necrovision games, which the first one of those only stays in like World War I for like the first 5 levels, and then turns into some weird Painkiller meets Buffy the Vampire Slayer bullshit. It really pulls a bait and switch, and even the second one is better and actually stays in World War I. It's really like a Wolfenstein in World War I situation. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm all for, but like with how few World War I games are there, we could use some more proper World War I games. The only other one I can think of is a game called what was that game called? Now it's just blanking on me. I think it was called Darkest Hour. It was a time traveling game. And it had a few missions that took place in other timelines, but for the most part, that game took place in either the Civil War or World War I, two both vastly underrepresented eras for shooters, I might add, especially single player. But if you can put up with the time travel shenanigans, like, it's not bad in the World War I part of it, at least. But getting back to Battlefield, like, because I was hungry for some World War I picked it up, and I will say the campaign, despite the fact that it's even shorter than the Bad Company games, it's decent. It does a good mix of vehicle stuff and on-foot stuff, although it does try to push a couple of stealth missions, which my response to that is, fuck that, I'm using my guns. I'm playing it the way it should be played, damn it. But thankfully you can ignore the stealth, unless you're playing on the hardest difficulty, which you're going to have some problems. But my problem with the campaign was, just in general, is the fact that so many of the weapons are either prototype weapons or weapons that showed up so late in the war that they were incredibly rare on the battlefield because if it was too late to really produce them. And I get why they did this, because otherwise it would just be people taking pot shots at each other, and snipers would be even more powerful than they already are, which, speaking of which, that's the main problem I had with the multiplayer, is the fact that this is like the biggest sniper field out of all of them. Like, you want to talk about being in a vehicle or being a sniper and being fucked, this is the one to do it. And also around this time, like, I kind of got into Star Wars Battlefront, and more specifically Battlefront 2, because that's... I'll get into that in a later video, but like, I got into that one after the loot box debacle, and I honestly had a lot of fun with it, so I didn't play Battlefield 1's multiplayer as much as I wanted to when I first picked it up, but it did keep my interest more than, like, say, Battlefield 3 and 4 did. Actually, fun fact, like, one thing that, like, kept me interested in longer than just playing it a few times and calling it quits back when I had picked up a month of premium, which is, or whatever the hell the live service is called these days, to be able to play the damn thing. I remember getting killed several times by snipers, and by then a friendly Zeppelin had spawned in the map, which, by the way, is actually a cool concept of, like, last chance, is this fact that a Zeppelin will show up. And I spawned in one of the thing's turrets, and I started raining hell down on the map. And I went from, like, being really low on the leaderboard to, like, almost at the top, just by, like, spraying everybody in the trenches with the machine guns that was nestled on the side of it. And it took forever for somebody to finally kill me. So that was fun. And that was also when I just figured, okay, I need to, like, start looking for vehicles or just pick the damn sniper. But, you know, despite my bitching about the balancing, it did keep my interest longer than some of the other games. I did have my fun with it. And, again, I do think the single player was fun for what it was, even if it was, like, sparse on content. And the stories themselves are kind of stupid and obviously fictitious. But between the multiplayer and the single player, I think it's fun enough to deserve an A. And just the fact that it's a few they took a chance on a World War I setting, I think they deserve a little credit there. Now, what they do not deserve credit for is Battlefield V, or as we in the business like to call it, Battlefield Vagina. Because, as you can see on the cover, and one of the first things they revealed was the fact that we are in World War II, where women are running across the battlefield. And some of them even have these weird prosthetic implants, because that makes sense. We want to talk about going back to being woke. This is peak woke gaming, because now we're just flat out rewriting history. And probably one of the more egregious things, I remember the single player, which by the way is even shorter than Battlefield 1's, if such a thing was even possible, was, I think it's the second or third mission in the game's campaign, where you're going in the enemy dam to deal with the hard water production that's being used for development of the atom bombs. And I believe the real raid was a joint effort between British commandos and the Norwegian resistance. We decided to retcon history and decided this random woman and her mother go in and save the day. Yeah, anybody who's like a history buff or has family that fought in that theater should be offended by that. Like, I get fictitious stories, but they were trying to present it. They were not trying to present it as just, oh, it's just a fan fiction, bruh. No, they were trying. They were trying to insert women where there were none. Like, I get it. There were women in support roles, and the Russians had female snipers, and the various resistance groups had women in them. I get that, but they were not as pronounced as these modern woke gamings that are trying to rewrite history make them out to be. F tier. I didn't even try the multiplayer, and again, the single player was short and it was shit. The only good part about it was, and I'm surprised this is the game they did it, the final mission is from the German perspective, and considering everybody these days who's not fucking a communist is now a fascist, I'm surprised they even had the balls to do that. But I'll give them credit for that, and that's the only good thing I will say about this game, because I think this is like the only shooter that actually has a mission from this German perspective in the single player. And that's honestly one thing I would like to see more of. No, not because, and no, it's not because of fascism or some sort of, what's the word, endorsement of it. It's because I like seeing stories of both sides. But let's just move on from that turd of a game and talk about 2042. Oh wait, I can't talk about this one because A, this is multiplayer only, so that automatically turned it off, and I was already turned off from Battlefield after Battlefield Vagina. And B, the PC version of this was a mess. And not only that, I think they threw an easy anti-cheat, which fuck that thing. And I believe that the console version was digital only as well, so. And by that time, again, I was already disillusioned with it, so I didn't even want to rent the damn thing, so I have not heard anybody say anything good about it either. So maybe someone had fun with it, maybe it got better through patching. You know, you can tell me about it if that's the case, but I could not give less of a shit about it. Battlefield 6 was kind of an interesting thing. They freaking presented it like, I remember some of the I don't know if it was the reveal or if it was an ad or what, but they were showing these four like freaking live service slop characters walking around, and they immediately get blown up, and then like the freaking actual soldiers come out and we're like, who are these guys? Oh, who cares? And they just move on, and it goes on to showing the actual game, and everybody was excited for that. It's like, yeah, finally something grounded again. Not only that, they also brought it a campaign, so I rented this one because after the last couple of games I had to try it before I bought it, and unfortunately it did not do well enough to keep me interested in buying it. I've also heard the game turned to shit through fail patching. Again, somebody who's played this game late game can correct me on that if that's not the case, but I have seen a lot of people say the community just fell off hard because of the support or lack thereof, I don't know. But I do remember the multiplayer feeling that it was just, what little I tried of it was just, this is just Battlefield 3, but better looking. I will say this is the best looking Battlefield game, but, like, who gives a shit? The single player campaign was okay. Like, don't think I didn't notice the fact that, you know, that was the most DEI cast of characters ever, which is funny considering the fact that the live service slot characters got blown up and these are supposed to be grounded. Nope. And of course, the only white guy is evil and dies, because you know that's what we do these days. But I will say the story wasn't terrible. Like, it wasn't good or nothing to write home about, but like, it didn't make me cringe like Hardline did or V did. It's just the characters were just bad. And no, it's not just because they were diverse, though that was part of it. It's because they were just so boring. Like, why can't we go back to Bad Company and have actual good characters? Like, I suppose they had more to them like Battlefield 3 and 4 characters did, but not much, other than just making me hate them because they won't shut up. It was kind of short, but that's to be expected. I do remember one of the things that did turn me off to picking this up later on a discount is just the fact that everything requires online play, including the campaign. They do the same thing that Black Ops 6 and 7 do, where you have to be online just to play the single player. I don't believe there's any bot support, so you know, LAN plays, they're playing locally is just not an option. So yeah, the best I can do for this one is a C. Like, it was okay, but there's a lot of things that weighted against it, and I know the community just fell off. So I can't be the only one that has that opinion for that game. And honestly, I'm probably being nicer to it than a lot of people did from some of the rhetoric I've seen. And then we have the last thing. Free-to-play extraction... not even extraction shooter. Fucking Battle Royale. Because, you know, after Battlefield 6 did what it did, this is what we're going to follow it up with on. Granted, it did release, pretty close after 6 did, so... I don't know why they didn't just put this in the game as a mode instead of making it a separate game. But, yeah, it is a fucking rogue... I almost said roguelike. It is another fucking Battle Royale, and I do not give a shit about those. And not only that, it's not a well done one. It's extremely laggy, the hit detection is terrible, the matchmaking is terrible, and the game's probably dead as fuck now. Another thing that, I forgot to mention with Battlefield 6 that definitely applies to this game, the PC version requires, new BIOS settings, so if your computer doesn't support it, guess what, you can't play it. I don't know why some of these modern games are pushing for that. But, my computer can run new games, but, I am not fucking with my BIOS to be able to run whatever the hell it is that is required. So, F tier it goes. But, yeah, I know I didn't really talk much detail about the multiplayer apart from, a couple of them. But, again, I just wanted to try doing something different and talking about multiplayer, but don't expect me to do that again. Because, as you can see, I just ended up talking about the single player for half of these, so I don't know. But yeah, of the ones I did play for a while. I do have good memories on. Battlefield 1 was good, Vietnam was pretty good, both the Bad Companies were great. Everything else was honestly forgettable, but that's just me. I'm sure most people have good memories of some of these ones that I didn't care for.